Hi, and welcome to another edition of Office Hours, where I answer your questions about the college application process. If you've been working through the process this season, congratulations, you've passed November 1st, the EAED deadline for 85 or 90% of all colleges in the United States. That's awesome. Today I'm going to cover some questions. Some people are forward thinking and being a little concerned about what the future holds for them. Some people are worried about messing up their applications or things not being marked complete. We've got a whole slew of questions, some with short answers, some with long ones. And as always, my caveat, the advice that I'm providing here is based on the information provided to me. If I was working with this student and had more context and more information about them and their applications and their academic history, the advice that I give might be different. But anyway, let's get started. So, JKLMNOPQRST 2023, fun, writes, I'm worried that one bad grade senior year will mess up my chances for college. This semester I'm taking AP Physics, and I am dying. I try hard in the class, but I cannot do well. The quarter just ended and I have a low C in the class. I'm worried I won't bring it up to a B, affecting my college applications. What can I do? P.S. This will be the only C I had throughout high school. I've heard about how students who do badly in senior year get their acceptances revoked. So there's a lot of information missing here. One, what major are we talking about? Now, you are taking AP Physics, so I'm tempted to assume that you're doing something in STEM or tech, but you're also taking AP Physics senior year. Usually students who are doing tech-related or STEM-related stuff take physics a little bit earlier than that, but depending on your school and the way that your school structures their curriculum, this could be the earliest that you could have taken it. So my immediate advice would be to get some help. Find a tutor, find somebody in the class who's doing well who can help you out. Make a study group. Do anything you can do to get additional help. Go talk to the teacher and just see what you can do to learn the material and understand the material. If you're understanding the material and struggling on the tests, that's definitely something where you should talk to the teacher about, I don't know what's going on. How can I demonstrate my mastery of this material in a way that makes sense? Because I'm struggling with I feel like I understand the material, but then I'm struggling on the tests. And see what happens. As far as senior year goes, this also depends on your major, right? If you're majoring in something STEM or tech, then this is something to be concerned about. Truly. Because physics is fundamental to a lot of STEM fields and to certain tech fields, especially if you want to do hardware engineering or any kind of serious engineering, you're going to need physics. And so having a low grade there is a bit of a problem. It is an AP class, so even if you ended with a B, that is still a good score on an AP class. Some people might say, well, a B is never good, but even an AP B is still a weighted 4. And so it's not going to bring your GPA down below 4. So that's like the worst case scenario, or the lowest we would want to be in an AP class, B. But as far as, having admissions revoked, some schools this might be a problem, especially the more competitive schools with the lower admissions rates. At other schools, it might not be a problem. If something does happen, however, it's worth reaching out to admissions at the schools where you're concerned. If you reach out to them and you tell them what's going on and you explain it and talk through, and maybe even hey, if I drop it after the first semester, how is that going to affect my admissions? And they might say it won't affect your admissions at all, you'll be fine. They might say, well, we would prefer to see this, but we'll have to take it into consideration with the context of everything else in your application. Communicate with them. If it turns out that you're not going to be able to raise the grade to a B, communicate proactively with those colleges. They will appreciate your honesty. They get to hear from your perspective what's going on and how you're trying to deal with it, rather than just getting the report card and having no context on it at all, and then just saying, well, lazy, or not smart enough, or whatever they say, right? They're not purposefully putting down students in their heads, but whatever the reasoning that they come up with in their mind is, it's better to explain what's going on to them and let them hear it from you than it is for them to let them just like make up an answer in their mind to explain what they're seeing. So try to get help. You still have time. So try to get help and raise that grade to a B. If you're having trouble doing that, then it's time to proactively reach out to the colleges that you've applied to where this is a concern, and you can talk about with them your options going forward for admissions. Like, can you drop the class or trade it for regular physics? Will that be okay? Will the C be admissible? They can help you figure out how to proceed in a way that's going to do the least amount of harm to your applications. All right. There's a couple of tricky ones in here. Another one about grades. Opter 37379 writes, I messed up terribly. Spring 2024, I took 2 community college classes outside of my high school. However, for the majority of the term, especially the last half, I got terribly sick, and because of these health reasons, I missed the deadline to drop the classes. I ended with a D and an F in those 2 courses. I had a call with my counselor and said that I can retake the classes to replace the grades, but that won't be till spring 25, which is January to May. Although it's not on my high school transcript, I do have to report these classes to avoid any issues with my application. I majorly messed up. I already know I'm cooked for the UCs, but the little hope I had with my SAT for the out-of-state colleges is also fading away. I don't know what to do. I don't think I'm going to get into college at this point. Okay. Number 1, take a breath. Right? You're going to be able to get into a college somewhere unless your list of colleges is like obscenely skewed towards reach schools. So just know that, right? You have a chance, and there's still time to apply to different schools. If your list was reach heavy, you can still apply to other schools. You're not too late. That's number 1. Number 2, this is what the additional information section is for. That is what the additional information section is for on the Common App. Use the additional info to talk about your circumstances. Here you're a little vague. You say you got terribly sick and health reasons, which makes it sound like it wasn't just the flu. It sounds to me like something more long-term or congenital or what's the other word? Something persistent occurred. I can't think of it's another C word. It's going to bother me. That kept you ill long enough to seriously like wreck your grades in these classes. Explain that in the additional information section. In additional info. You want to try to stay short and to the point, okay? Don't write a whole essay, but just be short and to the point. Say, I signed up for these classes. I got this illness. I was in the hospital, or I was sick or bedridden or whatever for this long, this many months. As a result, I could not complete these things, so I got these scores. I am intending on making them up this coming spring. I am registered for the courses in January, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Just be very to the point, stay very factual. You're not trying to manipulate them. You're not trying to make them feel bad for you. You're just telling them, hey, yo, I did this thing, then this illness happened. There was nothing I could do about it. It was this severe. This is how long I was knocked out for. And it caused me to do poorly in these classes. And then what are you doing about it? I am registered to take these classes again starting in January. And that's it. That's it. I'd accept that and accept you and say your admission is contingent on getting good scores in these classes. And then if you get good scores in those classes, you're totally fine. Use the additional information section. The UCs also have an additional information section. Use it the same way. They will look at that. The UCs especially use ELC, eligibility and local context. So depending on where in California you are, assuming you're applying from in-state, you might be in a place where not a lot of people have access to the community college resources, or where a lot of students maybe don't have access, but they don't take advantage. And so even the fact that you tried to take advantage of it, even though it blew up in your face when you got ill, the fact that you tried says something. And if you can make that up later and prove to them later that you can be successful at that, then that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Do not send those transcripts to them without giving them the context in that additional information section. Use that to your advantage. That is what that section is there for. Additional info. A lot of people leave it blank because it's optional. All right. Now to get into the actual application stuff. WEB's Burnt Toast writes, should I be concerned if one of my short answer essays says 30% AI generated? For context, I have an AI extension that will sometimes suggest grammatical changes to improve the flow of my writing. However, everything I wrote is my own, and the story is very uniquely mine, but it comes up as 30% AI. It's a short answer essay depicting how I saved someone from drowning in a rip current once. For context, I'm a lifeguard, and the story is how one of my first rescues, the person was very unappreciative of that help and kept trying to swim back on their own. I talked about how it reminded me of how I used to be just like that person, refusing to accept help. But there I was, a quarter mile out in the ocean, knowing I did not have enough energy to swim back on my own. I talked about how I grew from being a one-man show to placing my life in my coworkers' hands. I hitched a ride back on our lifeguard boat because I knew they'd go out there to pick me up. So is the 30% AI thing a problem? Probably not. AI detection software sucks. With a capital S, sucks. The odds of an AI detection program accurately identifying an AI written essay is like 50-50. It's going to show somewhere between 15 and 40% for most things because AI is trained on human writing. And so it's going to sound a little bit generic. I think that the best way to detect AI writing is if it sounds super generic and bland. If your story has specifics and details, then it's probably okay. Even if you're using, Grammarly or something like that. I'm not a huge fan of Grammarly. I was an English teacher, and so for me, I'm like, I know my grammar. And sometimes Grammarly makes weird suggestions or is technically wrong about some little piece of grammar. But regardless of that, like, even if you're using Grammarly suggestions to tweak the writing a little bit here and there, that should be fine. If you were rewriting entire sentences or if you were rewriting entire chunks of paragraphs, then there's maybe an authorial issue there. But, people hire editors. And so how is that any different except that the editor's not a machine? But no, colleges are not going to rely on AI detection software. They might have it and they might look at it. And if something comes up like 100%, then they're like, whoa, what? But generally speaking, I wouldn't be concerned with a 30%. A 30% is well within the normal range for what most writing comes up with in terms of percentage of AI generated content. And they know how inaccurate those things are. We've seen instances of this stuff being incredibly inaccurate. And so I don't think it's something where they're gonna just run it through an AI detector and then throw an application in the rejection pile based on that number alone without interrogating the information at all. So I wouldn't think too much about that. Next up, No Lie 7418. I'm just shotgunning questions at this point. It's application season. There's a lot of stuff going on. The UMD portal application says it's incomplete. I submitted my application to UMD, I'm assuming that's U Maryland, College Park, which I call UMCP, on Friday for early action, and it's telling me that my application is incomplete in the portal, ? I sent my test scores, and they arrived October 31st, and it says they've received them, but the recommendations are blank, even though I submitted them with the Common App. Is the recommendation letter deadline later than November 1st for UMD? I can't find anything online about a deadline for recommendations, but will I still be good for EA if they were submitted with the Common App and it's just processing or something? I don't remember off the top of my head if Maryland has a document deadline or a material deadline. It's possible, but if you can't find it on their website, then maybe not. A lot of colleges do have a material deadline, but they lay that out in the deadline section or in the required materials section of their website when under apply or undergraduate application, first year applicant, whatever. They usually lay that out. They'll say application deadline November 1st, material deadline or document deadline November 10 or November 15. Sometimes they will say something like, students must submit a complete application by this date. And that phrase, complete application, tells me no document deadline. Now, about these portals. The portals are updated by humans. There is no machine where your mail or email goes through some sort of device that then says, yeah, this is checked off, and then automatically checks it off for you in the portal. These things are manually checked, manually updated by and large. So to answer your question about the recommendations, I would look in the common application, go down under colleges, or my colleges, go down to Maryland, click on that, and then in the sidebar, you'll have 3 sections. You'll have questions, FERPA and recommenders, and then submit. Click on FERPA and recommenders, and check and see, does it say submitted? And if it says submitted, check the date that's next to it for your recommendations. As long as they were submitted prior to November 1st, you are fine. You are fine. They were in the Common App, they were submitted before the deadline. Maryland will download them and eventually update their portal and mark those things received. And that's the frustrating part about this, because it feels like every deadline is like absolute. And I know I get really annoyed with students sometimes who are just like, meh, I'm going to wait until the last minute to submit. Because these deadlines are kind of firm, right? We need to get our application in by the deadline. And if we don't get it in by the deadline, then you're not applying EA to that school. Like, that's just, they get enough applications, they don't need yours. But once we've applied, if we've done what we think we needed to do, we can talk to the college, and more than likely they're going to be willing to work with us if there's a problem, because a lot of this is out of your control. Your recommendations aren't in your control. And if they were submitted in time in the Common App, then it's on Maryland to download them and mark those received. So it can feel really nerve-wracking because you have zero control over any of that, but you just have to wait. You submitted on Friday, which was the deadline, so you just have to wait like probably Monday or Tuesday when the admissions officers go back into work. They'll go through and start updating these things in the system, and so you'll see your recommendations marked as received. It just might take 48 hours. And I know that that's like going to be the most nerve-wracking 48 hours of your life up to this point, but you just have to wait to make sure that they are marked received. Now, if you look in the Common App and they're not marked as submitted but by the deadline in the Common App, then there's a problem. Then you need to reach out to Maryland and say, oh my God, my recommenders didn't submit the documents. I am so sorry. I'm reaching out to them right now to see if they can get them submitted. Will you be able to take them if I get those done by Friday, or if I get those done by Wednesday, or whatever, right? Then there's another issue, because the teacher or whomever said that they would write it and then they didn't write it. And so that's a different problem, and then you'll have to navigate that. But that's when you communicate with the college and you apologize profusely and say, oh my God, they screwed up, or I totally missed this. Can I please get these to you ASAP? And see what they say. And they might say, sorry, like, we're Cornell, so we're just gonna move you to RD. And if they do, then that's just what happens. But for Maryland, I suspect that they'll work with you. So check the Common App. If they're in there, just wait until Tuesday and see if that gets updated. If they're not marked as submitted in there, then you have another problem and you need to reach out to Maryland admissions. All right. That's a short answer. Short and sweet. Just not at all how I operate. Okay. I'm going to cover one last one. I had 2 more, but I'm only going to do one. Bianca Yua writes, rejected by my dream school. Turns out my dream school denied me super quickly on their admissions. They're not even rolling. I called and they just said they've been very fast this year. I got into an alternate campus instead. It's not worth it to transfer since I'm out of state, and honestly, I'm just so upset. I wasn't mentally prepared to get a decision so early, literally 3 days after I applied. And I genuinely called admissions to make sure that this wasn't a glitch. And I just stared for like an hour at it because I was so confused. This happened days ago, but it only just hit me because I convinced myself that they would send me an acceptance to the other campus at a later date. But that's not what happened, and I don't know what to do. It's not even a hard college to get into, so I'm so nervous for all my other apps. If I couldn't get in there, how am I going to get in anywhere? Just looking for words of encouragement, I guess. And that sucks. I'm almost positive I know what college you're talking about, given that you said you're out of state, so it's a public school, and you said you got into a alternate campus. One of the few systems that has a strong out of state um, pull and that has a large system of alternate campuses is Penn State University. So I'm assuming this is Penn State. And I think in the comments they might confirm that. I'll look. First of all, I'm sorry. That sucks. To hear back that fast and to hear back in the negative is no fun. That's a punch in the gut. And that's unfortunate that it happened so quickly. Would have been nice for you to have like at least a couple weeks to just like sit. Although some people would disagree with me and say, no, just punch me in the gut and get it over with. Now, that said, Penn State is not an easy school to get into depending on your major. You are out of state. So that acceptance rate that you see for Penn State is not the acceptance rate that you're dealing with because you are an out of state applicant. On top of that, the GPAs and test scores of out of state applicants tend to be higher than the GPAs and test scores of in state applicants. So you're competing with a stronger pool of applicants than the students from Pennsylvania are competing with. You're also competing for a smaller share of all the seats because they reserve more of their seats for in state students. For all these reasons, Penn State's not a guarantee for anybody, especially if you're applying for something like CS or engineering or something like that. If you're applying for English or something else, maybe there's a little bit more wiggle room. So let's start there. Like, don't worry about the rest of your applications. Like, just because you didn't get into Penn State doesn't mean you're going to start getting rejected everywhere. Getting a rejection first sucks. It's much easier to get an acceptance first and then get rejections, and you can at least sort of like buffer it and say, oh, well, I got this other acceptance, so I'm okay. Like, it sucks still, but at least I'm okay. Getting a rejection first hurts. So I'm sorry that happened to you. But let's just be clear, Penn State is by no means an easy school to get into for out-of-state students. The other thing, though, you might have gotten some sort of scholarship to go to the branch campus. I've had students in the past who were offered $4, $5, $6, $7,000 a year to go to the branch campus, and as long as they're at the branch campus, they get that money. If they transfer to the main campus, that scholarship money goes away. So that's something to think about. The other thing, too, is that the Penn State admissions office is usually pretty helpful. You called them and you asked them if this wasn't a glitch, and they said, unfortunately. If you were to call them back or email them and say, like, hey, this was the place I really wanted to go. This was, like, one of, like, my top choice school or one of my top choice schools. What could I do to maybe get into the main campus? If there's anything that you can do, they will tell you. I know of a student a couple of years ago who had this exact problem, didn't get into a lot of schools, got into an alternate campus for Penn, and Penn was their best bet at going to a 4-year college where they would be happy. So they emailed Penn and they asked that exact question. And Penn came back with a few great options, like change your major to undeclared, and we can reevaluate you for the main campus. Apply for a summer start, which means that like late June, you have to be in Pennsylvania. So you lose part of your summer, that last summer before you go away to college. But if it gets you into the main campus, is that okay with you? Is that a trade-off, those 2 months? Are you willing to trade those for an acceptance to your dream school? So they offered up like alternate major, summer start, I think winter start, or spring start. I forget what else they offered, but it doesn't hurt to ask. If this was your dream school, I would email them right away and say, thank you so much for reading and considering my application. I was really disappointed to get into this branch campus because going to Penn has been a dream of mine, and I really wanted to go to the campus at University Park. Given everything in my application, is there anything that I could do to be reconsidered for the main campus? And thank them for their time, because it's going to be busy season for them very soon. And then just wait and see what they say. You might have alternate paths into the main campus if that's really where you want to go. There might be other ways to get there. And then you just have to weigh whether or not it's worth the trade-off. But all is not lost. You're going to be okay. Don't worry about your other applications. There's nothing you can do about those. And just because you didn't get into Penn's main campus doesn't mean that those other apps are doomed. But if Penn's really where you want to be, contact admissions. Be very polite. Thank them for their time and consideration. Express your disappointment and ask them if there's anything you can do, because Penn is really where you want to be. And if there's any, they'll look at your application again and let you know if there's any possibilities. It might be that there aren't. They might say, oh, your GPA is not strong enough or whatever. Sorry. But if it's within range for something like undecided, they might offer that as a possible alternative. And if that's where you want to be, if Penn is your top choice, then that might be worth considering. So get in contact with admissions. I guess that's the theme for today. Get in touch with admissions. Communicate proactively, get ahead of problems, and be upfront with them. And they're there to help you. They're not there to like trash on high school students. They're there because they like to work with students and they want to help students be successful. They're not there to wreck anyone's day. So reach out to them, see what they can do or what advice they can offer. It can't hurt. And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. So, if that video helped you, then please help me by liking, sharing, and subscribing or following on whatever social media platform you prefer. Doing so really helps allow me to do what I like to do, which is help students and families manage the college application process. And if you're looking for more targeted support yourself, there's a link in the description that'll allow you to book a consultation with me, and we'll see how I can help. It's free. Anyway, thanks again for watching.